Hey, hello everyone. We'll get started here now and let people kind of still trickle in, but thank you everyone for coming. We're super excited to have you all here, and thank you to all of our panelists for coming. We're super excited to see what you all have to say. So just with a couple introductions, my name is Audrey Anderson, and I'll be moderating all the Q&A or any questions that you guys have. Just put them in the chat and I'll make sure they get answered. And also joining us, we have Bethany Quinn, who's our Director of Content, and she will be doing more of an interview style with our panelists, getting some general questions started and seeing what everyone's doing to fight COVID and win. So our first panelist will be Leah Gettle. She's the Senior Manager of Administration and Foundation at Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative. And then next we'll have Meredith Rosansky talk, and she is the Chief Operating Officer at Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce. Then we'll move on to Stacey Pafford, who is the Director of Administrative Services at Phelps County Development Corporation. And we'll wrap things up with Elisa Sklar, who is the Vice President of Marketing at GIS Planning. So thank you again for all of you being here.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah, thank you to our panelists. And we wanted to get this group together today because COVID-19 has created unprecedented challenges for leaders of all sizes of economic development organizations and communities throughout the country. There's really no one that it hasn't touched. And in times like this, we need to have some creative, innovative ideas for how we can approach things and how we can help our communities to recover. And everyone here on the panel today represents communities that are doing some of those creative and innovative things. So we look forward to sharing them with all of you. Starting today with Leah. As Audrey mentioned, you're with Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative, but perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what you do for the organization and why.
Yeah, so Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative serves 4 counties in Eastern Oregon, and we are your non-traditional economic developer for sure. But we are owned by our member owners who pay the electric bill. And so because of that, what is best for our communities and our members is what's best for OTEC. We're all in this together. We have a key part of our strategy that's focused on growth. And so that's really triggered us to concentrate more over the last 4 years on economic development. And our counties are really unique that one of the top industries in all 4 counties is tourism. So we find ourselves in the tourism space rather frequently, and I have a background in tourism, so it melds really well that way. And so I oversee all of the economic development efforts at Oregon Trail Electric Cooperative.
Perfect, thank you. And so it's really interesting to me, as you mentioned, obviously a lot of industry in Eastern Oregon is related to tourism. Clearly tourism has been hurt by COVID-19. But for those who maybe aren't familiar with where Eastern Oregon is, it's very close to major West Coast cities like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. It's really not a far drive from any of those areas. So I thought it was really interesting how you obviously can pull from these areas, but you had to get creative in how to reach people because of COVID. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you've done and your journey?
Yeah, so Bethany, you're right on, and that tourism has been so heavily impacted by COVID, obviously. And so we have thousands of businesses through our territory that are directly tied to tourism. A lot, we may not see reopen. But one thing that we found, and it's so obvious, right, that you have to have that online presence. You have to have the online presence in order to reach people when they can't physically come to visit the area. And tourism, of course, is really marketing driven. And so they've always had the online presence. But what we did prior to COVID, and, of course, not knowing COVID was coming, but we are very fortunate that we gave some of our communities that didn't have it, so smaller communities, 50 people, 100 people, 500 people, an online presence through the Golden Shovel Gateway site. And then we also produce virtual reality videos to help our tourism partners market the area. So we launched those tourism videos in March, just right as COVID was happening. So it really gave our tourism partners a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, and they were able to market their communities in a different way while everyone was trying to market their communities. I mean, everyone's having the same idea. They're like, hey, we need to get out. We need to get on Facebook and Instagram and be posting really great pictures. Well, meanwhile, we had some virtual reality 360 footage to use. And it was just, it really set us apart from other communities when we're all competing for the same thing. And this goes for tourism, workforce attraction, and also business attraction. And the proximity to the major cities is important, especially right now. Oregon's dealing with some really horrible wildfires. I'm sure you guys have seen and heard. People are trying to get away from those areas. So they're trying to get out of the larger urban areas, whether it's for visiting or the population migration that we're all preparing for to rural areas, fingers crossed. And so we found that we had this huge uptick in tourism, and it's socially distanced tourism. We can social distance in outdoor recreation, which is really what our tourism is based on. And our Airbnb and VRBO customers have been going through the roof. And what we're hearing from the chamber and our economic development partners and even the realtors, hey, we have so many people looking to relocate here. We don't have the houses, we don't have this. And it's new for us. So it's been really positive in the, after some of the worst things that we could ever have imagined happening to our communities.
Right. And I think that it's really fantastic. Obviously, the timing worked out so well for you, right? How they were released in March. And really, as you mentioned, it puts Eastern Oregon in such a unique opportunity. The wildfires before that, obviously, there's been a lot of social unrest. A lot of people know that the West Coast cities had some of the most strict quarantine protocols in the country. Yeah. So it's really been an ongoing thing. And Eastern Oregon, even though it's close, a lot of people weren't aware of Eastern Oregon and what it was even like. And I think that's where these virtual reality videos did more than maybe an article would or a still photo. And we actually have a clip of one of them that I think can put that in perspective, if Audrey can bring it up on the screen. While she's doing that, I did also want to ask you the planning process. How long did it take for you to plan to put these together?
I'll answer that after Audrey plays it. It's a long time. I mean,
okay. All right. Go ahead, Audrey. We're ready for you. I feel like her cursor's playing tricks on her.
Yeah. I will talk about planning while Audrey's getting, oh, there we go. Yeah, so Audrey's, she's scrolling around using her mouse, and that's really demonstrating the 360 of the video, which makes it so unique, of course. You feel like you're actually standing there. This is up at our Oregon Trail Interpretive Center in Baker County, Oregon. So through the planning process, we really had to, it was really unique because we were working one-on-one with so many of our community partners to make this happen. And that was really important for us because we needed to tell the story. We needed to tell people why we were filming this and how it's going to help them. And then also we were focused on training our community partners and our stakeholders that can utilize this video on how to use it. So it took a while. The other thing was, and you probably noticed we were just in snow up at the Interpretive Center. There's no snow now. I wanted seasons. We very much have snow in summer. And so I wanted to capture both seasons. So for that reason, filming did take almost a year. We brought the Golden Shovel or the Place VR team out twice. And it was a lot of filming too, because we cover 4 counties. So we were doing all 4 counties at the same time. Mm-hmm. We also an entire video that is based around agritourism, which was actually funded by our statewide tourism commission, because they have a goal to really promote that. So we had different funding sources, we had different people involved, we just really needed the stakeholder buy-in all along the way. But it's become very powerful on the other end, because we're able to say, hey, remember this video we worked so hard to produce? It's ready, let's use it. The other thing I do want to say, because a lot of people, the headsets so like what Audrey just showed us is a way that you can use it on social media or your website, but the headsets are ideal. And those are pretty scary to people in rural areas, I will say. Like, they're like, no, I don't want to put that headset on. But with COVID, one thing that we're seeing is people are becoming more and more accepting of all kinds of technology. They're paying their bills online where they used to just walk into their local office. They're engaging on Facebook because a lot of people are quarantined with nothing else to do. So we're seeing this uptick in technology use, and that has really been key to the success of the videos, I will say, because people are like, oh yeah, no, I know how to do that. And I'm looking forward to when we don't have to social distance anymore and I can plop this headset on some people, and we're going to have headsets at the visitor centers. And I think after, post COVID, we're going to look back and say, wow, I'm so glad we were prepared to do this, but now we can really rock and roll. So.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And I do think, like you said, it can take a long time to put these together if you want to capture a variety of seasons. If you don't, you can have these put together in as little as like 45 days.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that it looks like a really fun place to hike. So
it certainly is. If you haven't visited Eastern Oregon, highly recommend.
Absolutely. Now, Leah mentioned something talking about stakeholder buy-in. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to have the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce on the call today, because they are taking an approach to coming out of COVID-19 that really involves everyone in their community from all different paths, a variety of stakeholders with their strategic council. So Meredith, I was hoping that you could speak to what you're doing, what the motivation behind the council has been, and really who's involved. Can you unmute her, Audrey?
Sorry about that. It wouldn't let me unmute myself.
I hear you now.
So I am Meredith Rosansky. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer for the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So we are sort of situationally located an hour north of Nashville and 2 hours south of Louisville. So sort of right in the middle off of I-65. And our chamber, we really knew this was impacting our entire community and sort of revived a group that we had convened prior. So about 3 years ago, we did a 5-year strategic plan. And so we really wanted a great cross-section of our community. So we have our judge, our elected county official. So they're called judges here for fiscal court. We call them a judge no robe. We have our mayor, both superintendents of our 2 K-12 school systems, the president of our university, president of our technical college, our workforce board, and then for each of our top sectors of our economy, the top 6 sectors, we have 2 co-chairs. And so it really gives us a good cross-section view of where we are as a community. And so the first thing we thought of when this all hit is we need to get that group back together and really talk about what is the impact across our community, across all these various organizations, and how do we make sure that when we come out of it faster, better than anywhere else. And so that was really the impetus behind bringing this group back in.
So how did you get the buy-in of local politicians, school board, elected officials, plus so many people from various industries?
Well, one, this community, probably more than anywhere else I lived, and I grew up a military brat, so I've lived all over the U.S. and all over the world. This community really has a can-do attitude, and they're really great about coming together. So we work really well with everybody on a daily basis. And we have a program with both of our K-12 school districts called SEK Launch, and so we're very involved in K-12 education all the way through post-secondary as a chamber, and then of course, you know, being the voice of business, we stay engaged with our business community. So calling them to ask them to come together wasn't a big thing. It was more getting everybody on the same page of what are the top 2 or 3 things that we need to focus on to really come out of it, get through this successfully and come out of it even better off as community.
Sure. Try to get everybody united on that same page.
Right, right. Because each sector is impacted a little bit differently. So for instance, construction, they didn't see a big drop off because they had their backlogs. Their sort of recession will start, you know, sort of towards the 4th quarter if
Sure.
we don't come out of this quickly. And so it's understanding, whereas, you know, as Leah said, hospitality was struck immediately and hit the hardest of any. So understanding sort of those nuances and where everybody is in their timing and what the both short-term and long-term effects are, because it doesn't look like we're going to be coming out of this, you know, within the next 12 months anyway. So what does that really look like for the survival of everybody across the sectors?
And I've actually had the privilege of sitting in on a couple of those meetings. And one thing that stood out to me were how some of those conversations were data-driven and really demonstrated how what's happening in one industry could then later have a ripple effect on another industry, and really tying that all together.
Right. That was an integral component of this. We do have outside of the strategic council, we have what we call our economic foresight committee. So a bunch of data nerds, as we call ourselves, that we really get together and kind of crunch the numbers and look at what does employment and unemployment look like, what are the, you know, what's spending look like across the different sectors, what are they seeing as far as unique, and really taking those forecasts that are being put out by various groups and saying, does it really resonate? Does it make sense? And you know, at this point, since this was sort of a global impact that nobody was really prepared for, nobody's really seen before, how do you try to make sense of how factual, you know, how much can you rely on the information that's out there versus drawing our own conclusion? Because, you know, knock on wood, luckily as a community, we haven't, our businesses seem to be rebounding faster and not being as hard hit as we've talked to other chambers in other areas. But again, that's also a factor of time. So the longer this goes on, what does that then look like?
Sure. Sure, and I think there is definitely value in having those conversations across the board with so many different industries, so that way everyone can not just see the data, but then, like you said, validate the data and think about how that's going to impact them in the future to help with your planning.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, when you know, everybody, I think that conceptually, I'll use healthcare as an example. You know, our major medical center, I think they think that because this was a healthcare, you know, pandemic, that, you know, they're still booming. Well, everything got shut down pretty much except the ER and the, you know, their COVID wing. And so you basically shut down an entire hospital over, you know, at any given time, you know, 27 patients or less. So that's a lot of money, a lot of elective surgeries, a lot of doctor visits, a lot of things that weren't happening for quite some time that massively impacted their business model.
Yeah, of course. And you're right, that isn't something that people automatically thought of.
Right.
So with the council, obviously you've been meeting now for several months. What do you expect the outcome of the council's work to be, and what do you anticipate the impact on the community to be?
So twofold. One, from a recovery standpoint, the top 3 things that they were looking at is one, this has brought to light the obviously technology. So we have a broadband issue within our community. There's still a large section of our county that's very rural and is not served by reliable internet. And so that creates a problem both for businesses that are trying to work remotely and for students that are trying to learn remotely. And so really looking at what are some unique and creative ways to better serve our community from a broadband perspective. So we have a separate working group, a spinoff of the Strategic Council, working on that. Luckily for us, our community has ramped back up very quickly, and we have a lot of openings, both from people who have sort of opted out of the workforce due to stimulus, or they're opting to stay home and homeschool their children. So, you know, as a nation, we've lost a large pool of employees that we had prior to this event. And so how do we creatively market to other areas to bring more people into our area to backfill those positions. So we're putting together a cooperative marketing campaign for that. And then also focusing more on tech-based, so trying to diversify our economy. So it's not something that people typically thought of Bowling Green as a hub for technology for those sort of IT workforce, but now that everybody's learned they can, you know, adapt and overcome and work from anywhere, that is obviously more of an option for us, and we do have a lot of assets that we can market. So we've got another group working on that. So those three things are sort of our top recovery, but the group is also working on an update to the overall strategic plan of, you know, the plan we put in place 3 years ago that was going to run for 5 years. Obviously, some of that has changed now. So how do we update that with our current information?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely smart to be able to do that, to recognize things have changed. So how do we change in response to that? And you know, it's interesting, our last webinar actually was talking about some of those relocation trends, right? As far as trying to get workforce to more rural communities. And from what we're seeing, it definitely is an unprecedented opportunity to do that. People are open-minded to that than they really have been in years past, which it's going to be exciting to see how that all plays out over the course of the next several years.
Exactly. And that's why we've been looking at, you know, what are those cities, and we're kind of looking at that I-65 corridor of Nashville, Louisville, and Chicago. Of, you know, they know where we are. They drive through here, especially, you know, when I was in Florida, our #1 drive market for the panhandle of Florida was Chicago. So I know they're driving I-65 to get to the beach every summer. So it's not a foreign concept of them going, well, where are they located?
Sure. On the way to the beach.
That's right. You know, the place where we stop for gas and go to the Corvette Museum?
Yeah, that's the place. There's more there to check out.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Meredith. Well, I think when we talk about location, when we were getting ready to hop on the call, Stacey mentioned that they are in the middle of everywhere. And so that's their mile marker. Stacey, would you mind introducing yourself? I'd like to talk about more about what you're doing at PCDC. Can you unmute her, Audrey?
Hi. Hi, I'm Stacey Pafford. I work for Phelps County Development Corporation. We are in South Central Nebraska. Like you said, we're in the middle of everywhere. We help our existing businesses to thrive and grow, and at the same time try to recruit new businesses and new workforce to the area. My responsibilities within the organization are mainly in the behind the scenes things, the financial records, the marketing, the website, scheduling, things like that. Did you want me to go into our COVID stuff now?
Yeah, I actually wanted you to chat about some of the innovative things that you are doing to support the small business community, because ultimately that's what, you know, we have to do every single day, is to try to make sure that these small businesses can sustain, that they can recover, that they can reopen. And you actually have several different programs that I thought were really great ideas and could be, you know, implemented potentially in other areas as well.
Correct. And we actually have seen some of these programs be recreated in other communities and throughout the state. And then also, I think we received phone calls even as far away as California that they were looking for information on how we did what we did. So basically, when this all hit and all of our businesses had to shut down, we really sat down and thought, now how are we going to help these businesses survive? We looked at our budget to decide which of the programs that we had planned for the year, which one of those might not be used as heavily as we thought they would be. So we figured businesses might not be as worried about updating the exterior of their building if they were worried about whether or not the doors were going to be open next month. So we just cut funds from different places and reallocated them to what we called economic recovery grants. Our biggest one was the Magic Multiplier gift card grant. And that is the one where we basically, if customers bought a gift card from the business, then we matched that dollar amount right back to the business. It was, you know, we always hear, is there any free money out there? This was literally free money for those businesses. And with no strings attached, they didn't have to do anything for it other than prove that they sold the gift cards. And
So
then
basically, if someone bought a $10 gift card from a restaurant, then you would provide another gift card. Is that how it works? Or you
no,
would
we
give them a check?
wrote the check to the business for that $10 to match, and they were allowed to sell. Well, they could sell as many as they wanted, but we would match up to $1,000 per check cycle. We wrote checks twice a month, so they were up to $2,000 per month per business. Yeah. And so that was a really big one. And then our Chamber of Commerce, they put a portal on their website where people could buy gift cards through there for their member businesses. That way, you know, if people didn't want to get out and go into the businesses, and for some of the businesses that were actually closed, that gave them a different way to buy them online to still support. And the Phelps County Community Foundation, they matched up to $75,000 of what we were putting in. But theirs went to the Phelps County Disaster Relief Fund, and that fund helps the nonprofits in the area that were meeting people's basic needs, like food, utilities, with rent, things like that.
Well, we know a lot of those nonprofits also are major employers in community as well. So it's important to keep those jobs.
And then in all, the impact, we provided over $94,000 to 70 businesses. But then when you add in the foundation's match and the consumer's match for the gift card purchases, the total impact was about $263,000 to our county. So that's
great.
It was great. People really came out of the woodwork to support that program.
And as far as the businesses who participated, were people able to participate that maybe weren't typically gift card sellers? You know, like restaurants maybe would sell gift cards, but some of your service industries and things typically do not. What did you see in regards to business representation?
We did have a few that began selling gift cards simply for this program. We tried to keep it to ones that were most severely impacted by the shutdowns. So, for instance, we had a landscaping company that we didn't provide because their business and income really was not impacted. They were still able to get out there and do their work. But restaurants, hairdressers, retail stores, things like that.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think that, again, this is a program where it's innovative, and as far as implementation, how difficult was it to get the program up and running?
It really was not hard. Once we decided what we wanted to do and got everybody was on board with the foundation and the chamber, and we put it out on Facebook, we put it out on our website, we made phone calls. Any businesses that were open, we hand delivered some materials just to make sure and get the word out there as much as possible. We did press releases so that it was in the newspaper, things like that. So.
Oh, great. Now, is this the program that you said other areas have also been implementing? I know you have several.
Yeah, this one, we received phone calls statewide, and then also I think Colorado, Kansas, California, a few different states were calling us too to get more information on how we implemented it and what restrictions we put on it, different things like that.
The other thing that I was hoping you could talk about was your cruise night, because that was just kind of a fun way to get people out.
Okay.
Quarantine.
Yeah, the cruise nights. So basically, I guess Mike Gordon, he is one of our community members. He had read an article about different communities doing cruise nights so that people could socially distance but still be out and about and enjoying something. Kind of brought the community together, even though we were supposed to be separate at that time. And he put out the word on Facebook, and it just brought our community to life on Friday nights. He challenged people to buy gift cards or meals from restaurants and support local charities. And there were literally hundreds of cars cruising our main drive through town every Friday night. There was one week that over $4,000 was raised for the Christian Charity Fund. Another week, there were 3 pickup loads of food and almost $1,000 in cash raised for the food pantry.
Oh,
It
wow.
was a fun way to come together when we couldn't really come together. So,
Sure. So it was like a different theme every week.
yeah, there was a week that he did flags for Memorial Day. One of the weeks was supporting police officers and first responders. Those are the 2 that really stand out to me. I can't remember the other ones, but yeah.
Sure. And that's something that I think pretty much most communities could do, is a type of cruise night initiative. You know, if you're in quarantine, get people back downtown. I know Leah has a whole lot of cute little downtowns.
Yeah.
I don't know if the breweries can give beer to go, but you know, the restaurants can. Oh, they can. Okay.
Yeah, our governor actually enacted to where we could have alcohol to go, which there was a lot of mixed emotions about that, but yeah, there were.
Sure.
And then,
Yeah, that's just a fun thing to do, to get people out, bring them together, and then obviously support local businesses through takeout and whatnot.
yeah, and those were basically our short-term things. We also were trying to think of long-term, and that was where we came up with the digital development grant, because, you know, now more than ever, like someone else said earlier, that the online presence is just vital. You just have to have it. And we had several businesses that did not have a website or different things that they could get the word out online. And so this was a $1,000 grant. They could use it for to create or enhance their online presence. That could be to create a website, add online purchasing capabilities. They could use it to join the chamber or the Grow Nebraska, do online marketing, just different things that could get their word out of what they did and that they were still there.
Sure.
At a time when online was almost the only way they could get the word out.
Well, and I think, Stacey, you have given me an excellent segue into Elisa, because they have tools that also help with that. You know, your point is very well taken. A lot of businesses prior to COVID did not have a good website or social media presence. And so when this happened, there was no way to really communicate with their customers and try to get any revenue in that they could. So your digital grants, I'm sure, were very well received within the community.
Yeah, we have so far 15 businesses have taken advantage of that one. It's been a good thing to see.
Yeah.
Really step up their game.
No, that's awesome. And honestly, that's going to be beneficial in the long term as well.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now, Elisa, I'd like you to introduce yourself with GIS Planning, because your tools can be utilized by communities all throughout the country who want to also bring awareness as far as what businesses are open.
Enjoying this so much. I always am so interested to hear about the creative ways that different communities and regions are promoting themselves. And I think it's really fantastic to see how creative people have been. I really think it's impressive. And I know that when I speak to many of our clients, even if they were originally focused on FDI or investment attraction, suddenly clearly the onus shifted to protecting local businesses and making sure that they're safe. Or we know that, you know, the vast majority of our employment is coming from these businesses, and that it's absolutely critical that we work to save them. So I love this. I've been taking notes. When the pandemic first hit, we're best known for online GIS data tools for investment attraction. Zoom Prospector, I'm sure, is familiar to many of you as the industry's leading online site selection tool. But although sites and buildings were still really important, and we know that location decisions are still being made and site selection was still happening, there's no question that it slowed down. And so protecting these local businesses, doing everything we could to nurture them, was critical. So we were fortunate that we had the resources to very quickly bring a new product to market that's called Zoom Prospector, and you can see it here on the Fayette, Georgia site, Fayette County. And what we did here was we used our GIS capabilities, that instead of listing sites and buildings, we can quickly and easily map and create a directory for the businesses that are open and that may have shifted. So the advantages here is that whatever it is. We have, I mean, we promoted this. We began in April. I think we have nearly 100 communities across Canada and the US who are already using Zoom Business. Is that you can add them in. The businesses can add themselves if they want to and edit them. The economic developers or the cities, they still get to approve them. You want to make sure you still have some control over the system, of course. Or you can batch add with a spreadsheet if that's something that you want to do. In the early days, this was really critical because when there were lockdowns and restrictions, it was important to let people know of restaurants that had quickly shifted to doing takeout or delivery. Or there were retail, Main Street retail that, didn't have a website before, but now they quickly pulled together a website. We wanted to communicate that so that people could still continue to use those local retailers, and maybe they were doing curbside pickup or contactless payments or whatever, some delivery, whatever it was, all of that could be quickly and easily added. And this way, consumers were able to go into their local retailers to find the things that they might otherwise order online from companies that are outside of their region and therefore not benefiting them. So just give you kind of examples of some of the things that you could see. If you click on there, they're able to add pictures or media. You could see exactly where they were. We did add COVID-19 data that's from New York Times. So if you want to be able to see case counts or things like that, that is in there as well. But this way people could go down. Now there's lots and lots of different fields. If they don't fill them in, then we don't show them. So that way nothing looks cluttered. If there was a gift card stimulus program like you were talking about in Phelps County, that's something that you could put in there. You could put a link to it directly. And that way people were able to go in there. And the nice thing was that we also let people filter by category. So let's say you're just looking for restaurants in the area, that it's possible to do that, hardware store. We were doing this on the fly, and we always say we get our best ideas from our clients. And just from what I've been hearing the rest of the panelists here say, like, there's so many fantastic, great ideas. So clients would come back to us and say, you know what, we want to make sure we could put in a GoFundMe account, or we want to add this. So health facilities was another one that people said they wanted to be able to show whether it was, everything from dentistry to a test site or whatever that is, that could be actually mapped in there as well. And it was just kind of a neat way to be able to connect people, where you are, you can put that information in there. And actually the reason I like to show the Fayette County site is that they were really creative in partnering with their local newspaper for this site. Now, for your local media, this is where their ad revenue is coming from. So they obviously, we all live in our community. So of course we have a vested interest in making sure that our businesses stay open, but certainly local newspapers, which are, struggling in a digital age anyway to find meaning, they were super excited to help promote it. So it was a great way to promote it to the existing businesses to make sure they added themselves. There was no charge. They could quickly just do that on their own if they wanted to just click on the add business link in the corner, but also an important way to promote it to the consumers in the area. And, at least in the beginning of the pandemic, people who might turn to, the big name online retailers, I won't mention them by name, we know who they are, where the money isn't staying locally, but there was really long lead times to get things delivered, even if you had, your fancy VIP membership. So it was even more important then to direct attention to local businesses. And one of the things that we're seeing now as things, go on and we go into many months of this, is that for the cities or the counties or the chambers or the economic developers, it's a nice way now for them to have this rapport directly with their businesses. Mm-hmm. To have databases and listings of their businesses. Not everyone knows what economic development is, of course, in our communities. We all know what it is, but they don't. But this is an example. Like, this is what a practical thing that you're doing to support their businesses, and people got it. So we're just really excited to see how this has evolved, and we're happy to, we could have this up and running in 24 hours. We actually have been giving this for free to our existing clients. So if you're already a GIS Planning client, we didn't charge for this. Any community, we index by population to keep it affordable. Anyone can have this up and running in a day on their website.
And I think there's a couple cool things that you mentioned that's particularly relevant. And obviously getting this information out immediately was so critical, since no one really understood what the status of providers were, you know, whether it was a dentist, if you had a toothache, or if you needed to get something for your child's birthday, or you needed to go to dinner, just nobody really knew what was going on. And so this was a great tool. You actually put it up on one of our clients in Texas, launched their site, and I think you had this up on their site like a week later.
Yeah.
Because it was right during COVID, and it was very helpful. But, you know, you talked about building that rapport and building that database. And I think that is kind of an additional side benefit that's really worth focusing on, because we hear from economic development organizations all the time that they want to be more in touch with their local businesses. And if they don't have someone who's maybe dedicated specifically, is just unable
but it's going to happen, is to maintain that relationship, in a lot of communities. Sometimes people feel economic developers are focused more on attracting new investment and maybe not always paying enough attention to the existing businesses. Of course we do, they're so important, but this is just a nice way to make sure that that is there and that it's easily accessible, and that all of the community stakeholders can link to this. Like, this is what we said, it's a link. Just your chamber should link to it, your county, your tourism, your convention bureau, everyone should have a link back to this website so that you can drive as much traffic as possible to those local retailers and have it all in one easy place.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've seen people use this and just really appreciate it. Plus, it's also actually helped to drive more traffic to economic development websites, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. During a critical time, this is when we needed it. I mean, you give an example, in the middle of the lockdown, I'm up in Montreal in Canada, and we were completely locked down on quarantine. And my daughter at that moment decided to take up painting. And I'm like, okay, well, I tried to go on those not to be named online retailers, and it was like a 3 or 4 week lead time. And then I realized, there's a general store, hardware store down the street that sells paint. Like, that's where I want to spend my money right now.
Right.
So it just seemed like a really easy, elegant solution to a complex problem, an important time.
I agree. Absolutely. And that's definitely why we wanted to present it today. So thank you. I know that we have gotten some questions from the audience today. So I would like to be able to answer a few of those before we go. Michelle had a question for Stacey, and Stacey, I know you answered it privately, but I'd like to read it out loud because other people may also have a similar question. And that was, with the gift card program, did any of your businesses have concerns about the liability to businesses created by selling gift cards?
We did have a few businesses that were concerned about it, but they quickly realized that not only did the cash come in from the gift card that was sold, but they also got the extra cash from us, and that cash would help them keep their business up and running during the time that the money just wasn't there. And then our hope was that once the gift cards were cashed in, that they would be receiving cash flows from actual sales, and then it wouldn't be as big of a hit to their business as they originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also had some customers who were basically buying gift cards and telling the businesses, I'm buying this to help your business out and we'll never cash it in, so you don't have to worry about it. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Just showing that community support.
Right.
Great. Also, I did see that there was a question in regards to GIS planning that I had sent to me, and that was, can you provide just this business listing tool, or does it have to be part of the total GIS planning package?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, we've had many communities who just chose to start with Zoom Business, and that's totally fine. It's a standalone tool. But if you do happen to be an existing client, you should get in touch, because we've already got it set up for you. It doesn't cost an extra dime, and we can have this ready to go. In fact, it's already ready to go, waiting for you. So either way.
It's free.
Yeah. It's free for existing clients, I should say. Of course, if you're not a client, there is a small additional charge. We really do try and keep it as affordable as possible. So.
Awesome, thank you. Also, someone has sent me a question for Leah in regards to virtual reality videos. Do you feel that those can be effective even without the headsets? Because the social
Yeah. And we get that question a lot because people are like, well, what if I don't have the headset? What do I do? And they 100% are still effective because like how Audrey was showing on the screen, they actually function as a 360 video and you can scroll around with your mouse or your keypad. And then it just, like you see them on Facebook a lot where you actually can scroll around with your phone and see everything. So it's still putting you in the place and showing that information in a different way. So I think that because it's such an innovative marketing strategy, it still really differentiates you.
Thank you. Meredith, I had gotten a text, and it's not related to the council, but someone wanted to know if they could visit your Corvette museum.
Absolutely, it's open, and honestly, they're booming.
Okay, great. All right, Audrey, do you have any other questions for our panelists today?
I don't. If anyone else does, quick put it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate your time today and sharing what you've been doing.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.